conversation. So welcome, Rita.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. And, every week you send an amazing e-newsletter. And I read it. As a matter of fact, when we connected, I told you that. Every single week, sometimes I even print it out so I remember a little bit more about what you say. I know I'm still printing things, right? But
I love it.
honestly, it matters what you're doing. And I thought, when you invited me to do this, I thought I couldn't think of a better place to be than other women who are fearless. We certainly, have learned a lot along the way with wisdom. And for me, what I'm doing right now, I couldn't be in a better place in my life than just sharing, what I've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's when you're vulnerable, when you're so open to sharing, on my TEDx stage, I shared the very first sentence that I used to have 11 closets and 9 rolling racks filled with clothes. And that was like going to confession. But it felt so cathartic to say that because I had been hiding it for all those years, having to look good, having to have that huge house, which honestly, I loved it. But a 5,000 square foot home for a single person makes no sense whatsoever. But so, everyone has a journey. And my journey was, when I went to Senegal to visit my son, who was in the Peace Corps at the time, that trip changed my life.
Wow.
I had never really experienced people have nothing, but they were so generous and giving.
Yeah.
And when my son's African mother had made this beautiful dinner for 16 people, her kitchen table was the ground.
Wow.
And my kitchen table at home sat 16 people. And so as I'm sitting there on the ground in front of this beautiful bowl of grains, I kept thinking back to what I had at home, and it wasn't a happy home at that moment. And so I thought all this stuff, and I'm not happy, and they have nothing, but they were happy. And the moment that truly changed my life is when I had been gifted a tiny little live chicken when I first arrived by the village elder. And that evening, that little chicken sat on top of this big bowl of grains with all these happy, smiling people around it. And my son's African mother pushed the better part of the chicken towards me and my son. That moment, because they were giving of whatever they had, which was so little. So, yeah, that changed my life. It changed the trajectory of what I was choosing to do.
Yeah. Wow. Well, give us the synopsis of, you went, where you were at, what you had, and then where you went to, just so everyone can understand the scope of what we're talking about.
So for 40 years, I've had an interior design firm, and we've done work all over the country, everything from corporate interiors, restaurants, hotels, to tiny kitchens and tiny houses. So our experience, also Supreme Court Justice Chambers. So our experience is vast, and I've loved every single minute of it. Well, maybe not every single minute, but most of it. And it was that trip to Senegal that said, I don't want all this stuff. When I came back home, I literally walked through my house, and it was almost as if all of the lights went out for me. It was just stuff. It was no longer beautiful things. It was just stuff. And so when I processed that, it took me 1 year. I decided, okay, I don't want all this anymore. I want that simple, joy-filled life like I experienced in Senegal. And so that was the main reason, the why of what I was doing. So it took me a year to downsize. I'd never downsized before. And so for 1 month, I cried. 1 month. I mean, as a designer, we do these big buildings, and I thought, oh, I can do this. I've got this. But guess what? I cried for a month. And then one day I finally woke up and I said, well, I bet my sisters would be glad to help me. My brothers would be glad. So all I did was call family, and they said, we'll be right there. So they came from New England. Every weekend, somebody was there. And so I created some processes, because that's what you do in design. If you want to design this big building, you can't just look at it as I mean, you do look at it as a whole, but you also have to break it down. So I broke it down into manageable chunks. And my chunks were once a week, I would have someone come, family, friends, and we would only work for 4 hours. And after 4 hours, we would go have fun, and we'd have wine, and we'd have dinner. And so then we would talk about the fun stuff or the crazy stuff or the tears or whatever, that occurred during that 4 hours.
Ah,
And it was magical. I mean, it wasn't
yeah.
anything I knew about before. It was just something I created because fun is such a big part of my life. If I'm not having fun, I'm not going to do it. And
Yeah.
so you can't say decluttering is fun,
Right.
but I made it fun. I made
Yes.
it fun because I was looking forward to the, the after party we would have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, so much happens within that 4 hours, picking up the
Mm.
photos and
Yeah.
crying, or my dad's alarm clock. Why does a little $1.99 alarm clock make you cry? I had to
Right.
figure those things out. And so I started being called the downsizing designer. And it was a moniker that I originally rejected. I thought, I'm not going to clean out people's basements. But then I embraced it after I got over that attitude. It was an attitude problem.
Mm.
I said, you know what? People are reaching out to me because they too want to declutter and downsize, and they're looking to me to show them how. And
Right.
so simply by sharing my story on the TEDx
Wow.
stage, and also by writing my best-selling book, I was able to share my story. Thank you. Yeah, downsize your life, upgrade your lifestyle. Secrets to more time, money, and freedom. So all this is just sharing my story about, how I did what I did. It was not intentional. It would be brilliant if it had been intentional, but it was not. It's just
Yeah.
the journey as it occurred. And that,
Yeah.
just sitting back, I mean, the very first week that I was in my tiny apartment, so I went from 5,000 square feet to 867 square feet. I had a beautiful little apartment in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And that very first week, I thought, I have nothing I have to do.
Wow.
And coming from a 5,000 square foot home where there was always something to do, had to be
Right.
done, I had nothing I had to do. And so I sat there thinking, like, what do I want to do? And
Wow.
that was the real transformation that started to occur. And
Yeah.
I said, I've got to start sharing this story with other people, because
Yeah.
they're asking me, how do you do
Mm.
that? And what's the comical part is people for many years paid me to upsize their homes, and now they pay me to downsize.
Hey, that's I
And
love it. Well, it speaks to a thread that we talked with Michelle Villalobos about at the beginning of the day of that. I love that this kind of unfolded because you were just following your own desire and your own transformation and your own thing, instead of like trying to figure out a thing to do or service you could offer. It was just like, no, here's a journey I'm going on because I have a deep desire to do it. And then it turns out it can help other people as well.
it's an ongoing process because it evolves. So
Yeah.
right now, I mean, I still have my interior design business, but another whole business has morphed, and it's the downsizing designer, where I write, I speak, I have about 1,200 videos on YouTube and about 900 blogs. And
Wow.
all it is it keeps coming out. And if you keep letting it come out, what people come back to you to say is, oh my God, I really needed to hear that today. And there's
Yeah.
nothing better than that, knowing you're
Yeah.
making a difference. You don't even know these people, and then
Yeah.
they'll say, what you said today motivated me to, get off my butt and do it, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And
Yeah.
just by listening to your heart, and there's so much self-reflection that occurs during a life transition, if you
Mm.
allow it.
If you allow it. If you
Mhm.
allow it. So how do we um you know, I love the framework that you created, right? I love the doing it for 4 hours with a family or a friend and then having a reward afterwards. And then having that be the space where you talk about the clock or the piece of clothing or whatever. Um, and I know that even with that framework set up, I'm sure there were times when you still felt like, the clutch. I'm going to guess, maybe you didn't, but with the clutch of like, how do I get rid of X? So how do you work through that, or what are some ways that you can help people if they get to that spot?
So it's basically sentimental attachment, right?
Hmm.
So we all get attached to stuff, even to clothing. When you think about it, there's an emotional attachment to clothing. When I used to be that size, or then there's an aspirational side to it. when I lose that weight, then I'll be that size again. So how do you get attached to clothing? I don't know,
Yeah.
but I still have a little problem with that. But it's so there's physical clutter, and there's emotional clutter, and there's digital clutter, and there's financial clutter. There's all kinds of clutter. People think clutter as physical, but it's not all just physical. So how do you let go of those things? Number one, you have to recognize that I'm attached. And then depending on what your motivation is. So my motivation was to downsize and to live a simpler life with less. So how do you go from 5,000 to 867 without giving up something? So
Yeah.
the motivation was there, the why. So once
Yeah.
you know why you want to do something, it's like a snowball. The motivation is just there. And you have to keep reminding yourself of why. So that entire year that I was downsizing, even though I didn't feel like it, I thought, you know what? If you really want to downsize, then you've got to do it. So it's like kicking yourself in the butt, kind of.
Right.
But when you when you do have all this emotional clutter, then you have to kind of understand what kind of emotions are there. So there's aspirational clutter. So when I was going through some of my boxes, I found a box of unopened VHS tapes about public speaking. And so I had never opened it because I wasn't ready to open it yet. But when I found that, I said, oh, I remember that. When I really wanted to become a public speaker, but I was afraid I had no training. Well, then, here I am years later, and now that's what I do. So then there's also things like bargain clutter. We're all guilty of that, where, something's on sale and you've got to buy it and it's sitting in your closet right now. And then other types of clutter. There's just a number of different types of clutter. So you have to kind of understand that. On my website, and people are able to go there. It's a free download, and it's how to get rid of your sentimental clutter without losing to get rid of the clutter without the emotions. So it's a 5-step process. It's a very helpful tool for people to kind of analyze, oh, I'm dealing with this kind of clutter, like aspirational clutter. I wanted to be a public speaker, and am I ready to let go of that? And so it gives you a step-by-step process.
I love that. I love
It's
that.
free to download.
I noticed when and Dorothy could probably put that in the chat. I noticed when I was, getting rid of my 80%, I had a lot of I never thought of that term before until I think I saw it in your book too, the aspirational clutter, because I had I have this vision of myself that I was, someday I'll have this boyfriend and then he's gonna have these friends I'm gonna entertain. I'd love to entertain. So I had all these things to entertain with. And then it's like some of them I was using when I was entertaining, but some of them were for this like other life that I thought I was gonna live, that I'm like, I'm not living this life. Like it's not happening. Let it go. Let it go. Like
It sounds like that movie, Let It Go, Let It Go.
yeah,
You're reminding me of when I moved to my tiny apartment. Now, mind you, I actually had a decent sized closet there, but I brought with me 9 little black dresses. 9. And one day I only declutter on rainy days or snowy days. And so it was one of those days, and I looked at my closet and I said, what am I doing with all this stuff? It's crazy. So I decided that was the day I was going to figure out how to let it go. So, and I also had to clean my apartment. So I got dressed up, I put jewelry on and everything, and I'd be vacuuming with this dress on, and I'd look in the mirror and say, nope. And then I'd get ready. So I winnowed it down to 5. And anyway, but that reminded me of that story, because the someday is really a problem for a lot of people. It's all right, so someday I'm going to clean out my garage. Someday I'm going to get rid of, my dad's workbench, or all the rusted screws and bolts that are in that little box that sits on top of there. Someday. And so, we really have to imagine that if you want this kind of life right now, in other words, design the life that you really want, Do those boxes of old screws, does the old workbench really belong in that life? And if it's not going to serve you, if it doesn't have value for you right now at this kind of life that you want, then the answer is no, and then you let it go.
Yeah. And then you can also let it go. One thing that helped me when I was getting rid of the 80%, I had this wall, I'm sure you see this a lot, wall of books. I
Mhm.
love to read and love information, and I had read all the books. And so it was a very like, look at that. And I can pull this book down if I need another thing. And what I realized was a lot of those books I had read one time and I probably wasn't going to read again. And it was like, so they're not doing anyone any good. The book doesn't get to live its purpose on my shelf. And
Right.
so I was like, all right, I'll let the books go because there's somebody else who probably wants, who might want it or might read it. And somebody ended up taking them for they took all of them for some English language library they were starting in like Romania. And
Mm,
then they sent that, and I was like, how cool is that? That, from my shelf, there's somebody who's now going to have access to information that they didn't have before. And it's like, that's a way better purpose than letting it sit in my house, you know?
that's a wonderful example. I have a
Yeah.
similar one, and that was and this is in my book because it was a story that's very meaningful to me. But I was going area by area, week by week, and I came to this one of my 11 closets, and I opened it up, and there's still tags. Like I could look around, there's all these tags and beautiful suits and everything else, which anyway, it just made me cry, thinking, oh my God, Rita, all these people that don't have clothes, and look at what you have right here. So that particular day, and it was a snowy day, I decided I was going to attack that closet. Well, I packed the entire closet. Very little did I keep. I gave most of it away to a homeless women's shelter. And I brought it down to that shelter. They came running out, so happy to see me because I donate a lot there. And on my way home, I thought, this is what matters. I don't
Yes.
need those clothes. Someone needed those warm clothes,
Yeah.
the coats or whatever was in there.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't need them. So,
Yeah. I
mhm,
love it.
mhm.
So what is it? Let's talk about like what are some misperceptions that people have about, downsizing or becoming a minimalist? Like
Yeah,
where's the resistance?
yeah. So what's kind of funny, I'm actually an interior designer and we do all these beautiful spaces, but I've turned to be an advocate for minimalism and living with less because of my experience. And so when I speak to our age group and I say minimalism, it scares the heck out of some people. But
Yeah.
when I talk to a younger audience about minimalism, they totally get it. So I thought, I'm just going to merge the two. It's all about simple living. It's
Yeah.
about living with less so you can live abundantly more.
Mm.
So some of the misconceptions are that when you are a minimalist or when you live with less, you're giving up everything.
Hmm.
You're not. Actually, in my house right now, which is kind of the perfect size, I have only surrounded myself with stuff that I need and stuff that I love. There's not one thing in here that I don't love or absolutely have to have. That's
Yeah.
really what minimalism is. It's letting go of the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
So did I need those other 5 dresses? No. Um, do I need the box of screws in my garage that's my dad's? No.
Yeah.
Those are the things you go through the process and you're asking yourself these questions. Does it add value to your life right now? If it doesn't, let it go.
Mm. Mm.
So that's one of the misconceptions. The other one is you're going to live in this very stark environment. People that know me, I would never live in a stark environment. I have to have my family photos, the meaningful
Mm.
things around me. So yes, you can have all of that. Um, And minimalism is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. There's no one size fits all. And so many people have this misconception that, oh, that's a minimalist.
Mm.
I'm a minimalist and yet I'm a designer and we do these fabulous spaces. Okay,
Yeah.
so what does that
Mm.
mean? It just means that you've gotten to a point where you're content with I have all I want, all I need, and I've never been happier. That's
Yeah.
such a wonderful place to be, because that's simple living.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
pare everything down. Like if you got into 2 suitcases, good for you. I don't think I could do that if I was, I'm not sure I could do that. But
You
anyway,
could. You could.
but when you pare down to just that and then to your 1 suitcase, that says so much, because I only need so much. And the fact that you were nomadic, you obviously didn't need any more to carry all that stuff around.
Right.
In your home, when you look around, here's an example. So when I first downsizing, my daughter-in-law, who I love dearly, but she's like this big, and she looked at me, where do you want to start? And I said, well, let's start in the kitchen. This is like day one with my family coming, and I'm thinking, that's not the place to start, by the way, the kitchen.
Okay.
She opened one drawer and she holds up 4 sets of measuring spoons. And she said, Rita, really, you need 4 sets of measuring spoons? And I was like, well, no. And so anyway, she had the box here. This was the donate box and this is the keep. So I kept 1 set. And that just resonated with me, because I thought, you know what, she's so right. Do we need all that? So minimalism is just paring down to what you need and what you love.
What you need and what you like. I love it. I love it. It reminds me, it's a little bit of a mix, pardon me, also in there of I remember the spark joy woman who, right? Like, does it bring me joy? I don't need all these, but this one or 2 black dresses, yes. Not 9. So I have a few more questions, but if you guys have questions, drop them there in that Q&A tab so we can, because I know there's things brewing out there right now as Rita is talking. So what are some steps, right? Somebody's listening and they're like, okay, do you have like as an easy framework that we can walk through so we can start doing this ourselves?
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's the number one question. Where do I start?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people are typically overwhelmed. I mean, I go back to my own story where I cried for a whole month. And I cried many times after that too. But the overwhelm and the anxiety and the stress of having too much stuff around you. So right now, if you were to think of one room in your area, in your home, I would say start with one. There's a couple ways to do it, but one is to start with the room or the area that bothers you the most.
Okay.
So if you walk into your mudroom every day and it's filled with boots and books and book bags and everything else, and every time you walk in, you just got that feeling of, or let's say that you go into your master bedroom and you've got clothes laying all over the chair. There's still, shoes on the floor, and it does not, make you feel good. Or your the guest room that's become the catch-all for everything. So you could start in the room that bothers you the most. And then rather than looking at the entire room, look at one area of the room. Because, we tend to get overwhelmed. So if I'm designing a building, I mean, obviously I have to look at the whole building, but I would get totally overwhelmed if I thought just of that. But then if I start to chunk it down, so in this room, and let's just say that it's your guest room, okay, well, I'm gonna do the nightstand. So you're not overwhelming yourself, you're starting small. So it could be a nightstand, a drawer, it could be a dresser, it could be part of the closet, not the whole closet necessarily, but part of the closet. So just a mantra is, it's one one drawer, one shelf, one closet at a time.
Yeah.
And
love it. Love it.
you'll feel motivated because you'll see success. So a junk drawer, I think, is a perfect other place to start. So if everybody's got a junk drawer.
Yeah.
And if you just empty the junk drawer upside down and you look at it and you can kind of laugh at it. Say, oh my God, I can't believe I've got lipstick and with screwdrivers or with light bulbs and everything else. And after you've done laughing at yourself, because it's probably pretty silly, then start separating out the things that don't belong in there, or things that do belong, and then put organizers in there. One of my one of my blogs was about the funniest closet clean out ever, and it was a 30-day challenge. So every single day you go into your closet, and maybe day one is said, you find something, you say, I can't believe I bought that. And you take that out and that gets removed. The second day it would be, oh my God, that looks so bad on me. Why would I even keep it? And the third day and so forth. That was kind of fun to write because it was my own experience. And like, well, that used to fit me. It doesn't fit me anymore. So why am I having it? Or that aspirational dress, whatever it was. So there are many ways to start, but the most important thing is to start small. Don't believe you can do this entire thing at one time, because you can't. And you also have to understand there's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. You're going to cry, you're going to laugh, you're going to be angry. And then you're going to be confronted by other people. Oh, your husband doesn't want to declutter, your partner doesn't want to declutter, but you do. These are all the things that happen during the process. And you just have to keep pushing through and figuring it out.
And what do we do with that? I mean, I'm single living alone, so I don't have to worry about other people and factors, which is nice. The good news is I don't have to worry about them. The bad news is then, my like 2-suitcase living, now that I'm in a place that's 1,100 square feet, it is definitely piled back up with some things. But what about people who have, a spouse or child or, somebody else to consider who might not be on board? How can we get them on board?
I have something, it was a blog, it was about the dueling downsizers, or dueling declutters, however you want to say it. But, I mean, even in my own family, my sister she was the clutterer and the husband wasn't. He could quickly throw things out, she couldn't. So you run across this all the time. So if you are the declutterer wanting to declutter and downsize, work on your own stuff first. It's kind of looking for a fight if you start decluttering their stuff.
Right. Let's start with your closet. We need to clean this thing out.
You're creating all this clutter, right?
Right.
That's not a good way to start. So a good way to start is look at your own stuff and say, what do I need to declutter? And what's kind of interesting in that journey is, your husband might notice it. Oh, I see that your closet's much nicer or, neater or whatever. Or, I see that, the laundry room, if that's your job, that the laundry room is really organized now. They might start to notice. If not, just keep doing it. Until ultimately their brains open up to something, but it's kind of a process. And then you can always have the conversation, just that, I want to downsize. I know you don't want to downsize, but can we at least talk about it? And so have an open conversation about, decluttering your home or downsizing your home. And if you open your mind to the other side, like this happened to my brother and my sister. My brother, banker in Boston. Nope, I'm not moving. I don't want to downsize. My sister-in-law, she and I had all these conversations on the side, I hope they're not watching. I'm kidding. But she wanted to downsize to be closer to their grandchildren. And so there was this family thing going on all the time. And ultimately, she said, it would just be so much easier if we could live near our grandkids. Why don't we just try it? So it was more a matter of, okay, for a couple of weeks, let's go live in that area and see if we like it. And then let's look at 55 plus communities and see if we like it. So it was almost like prototyping. What would that lifestyle look like? The funny thing is, and Bob, if you're listening to this, you know this. But anyway, one day my brother came home and out of nowhere said, what would you think about downsizing? But I think the seed had been planted long enough that it finally grew. And
and was she like, oh, that's a fantastic idea. I want to.
Anyway, they downsized, they love it, So
that's really cool.
It goes true of downsizing or decluttering when they see the benefits.
Yes.
And it's just keeping an open conversation, not letting it become confrontational.
Yeah.
That's the key right there, is just to and so when it comes to downsizing, a lot of people our age are saying, well, I wonder what it would be like to live in, the Carolinas or in Florida or whatever. Well, I call it prototyping a lifestyle.
Okay.
So, if you have a month vacation, go live in that area for a month. Go talk to everybody in the community and say,
Yeah.
what is this like? So
Yeah.
I've had friends who were curious about the villages in Florida, and then some of them came back and said, no way for us. But one or two of them said, oh, this is a great lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it's all very individual.
Yeah.
But it's about prototyping, putting your toe in the water, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
I see someone talking about RV life,
mm,
a lot of people are doing that,
mhm.
but how do you know unless you try it?
Right.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm,
Well,
mhm.
and I do feel like in terms of investigating neighborhoods or cities, VRBO and Airbnb make that easier now because you can find a place that's in a neighborhood versus in the like touristy fun part of
Yeah,
an area,
yeah,
and have a little bit more of an experience of
yeah,
day-to-day life. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
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 So I want to get some ideas from you of where to take the stuff, and then I want to talk about non-physical stuff.
Okay.
Just some ideas on like, okay, we got all this stuff. Now what do we do with it? Because then that can become another another thing too.
Sure. And actually, before you start to downsize and declutter, it's important for you to look around your area and say, where would I like to donate this to? So,
Mm.
in my area, there's a couple of charities. One particular one is a women's shelter where women flee in the middle of the night with their kids and they have nothing. That to me
Mm.
goes to my heart.
Yeah.
So before you even start the process, know a couple of areas that you would like to donate to, because it also has to do with logistics.
Yeah.
So if you put this couple of bags in your trunk, you don't want them to be there in 6 months. You want them to get delivered somewhere.
Right.
And then
Right.
also find people that will pick them up. So like AMVETS and some of those, you just leave it on the doorstep, certain things,
Mhm.
not everything, and then they will pick them up. In my book, I have, and actually it's on my website, 101 places to donate your stuff.
Oh yeah, I saw that in
So when
there.
you were
Yeah.
looking at books, there's a section
Yeah.
for books, and
Mhm.
so I think it's a little bit of research, and then
Mhm.
you'll find your natural places. Like for me, I have I have a wonderful woman who's been my housekeeper for many, many years, and my way of decluttering right now is I just leave her a couple of bags of clothing or books or whatever it is, and they take everything because then they distribute it among their Hispanic community, which to
Yeah.
me is a wonderful way. When I downsized, this kitchen table that sat 16 people, I thought, what am I gonna do with that?
Yeah.
My housekeeper was there, and I said to her, whatever you want in this house, please just let me know. And with just that quick shot, I would love your kitchen table. And right now I can see her family sitting around my kitchen table every
Mm.
single day or every single week. And that makes me happy. It gives me
Yeah.
joy to know that
Yeah.
other people, and she knew exactly what she wanted.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I
And,
find
in answer to your question too, ask your family. So
mm,
in our generation, I know I have two sons and they're adults. Live in smaller homes. They do not want all my stuff. One of the things that I wrote, and it was a video that went viral, it was about, mom, we don't want your stuff. And so there's this rebellion against us giving them stuff and
mm,
assuming they want it. So I had to really think that through. And it's really a generational difference that we have to accept, that they live
mm.
in smaller homes. They may not have the same taste. I know when I was newly married, any of that big brown furniture, I would take it because, sure, I'll find a place for it. Well, then the house got exceptionally cluttered.
Right.
But our kids
Right.
are our kids are putting boundaries around what they want and what they don't want.
Yeah.
And that's really a good thing.
Yeah.
We can accept it. It's hurtful at first to hear your kids say, I don't want your stuff. But on the other
Mm.
hand, they're being smart about it. They don't want to clutter their houses. They want that simpler life. So
Yeah. I love it. I
yeah.
love it.
Mm.
Another good resource I found too is the is Buy Nothing groups.
Yep.
I have one in Chicago, and And that's great because people come and just pick stuff up. And so I've used both ways. Like I've upgraded some things or, and found, and then I've also just like, I don't need this anymore. And then someone takes it and they're thrilled to have it. So
Yeah.
nice.
Another funny thing is if you just put it out on the doorstep or on the curb and then you put free, and it's amazing how many people will take whatever it is.
Yeah, totally, totally. So all right, so we've talked a lot about stuff, physical stuff. Let's talk about other types of clutter, like financial clutter, I know is one
Yep.
that you like to talk about. So
Yeah.
talk to us about that. And again, if anyone has questions, we can get that in there. Yeah.
So when you think about your life, we all grew up in a certain kind of family. We talked about money. We didn't talk about money. Our parents were good savers or they weren't. Those are things that we grew up with, and we carry a lot of that with us. So it's financial clutter when you are always in debt, and maybe you think back and, okay, your parents, were always in debt, or they saved for stuff. So we grew up in a family with 5 kids, and we were all in college at the same time. So there was a financial pinch point for my parents, and all I remember is that they always saved for stuff before they bought it. And it was definitely an era before credit cards. But when there's financial stress around financial clutter. And so how do you take care of that? I mean, you make a commitment to getting out of debt if you're in debt. You make a commitment to staying on a budget. You make a commitment to mindfully consume, so you don't just go to the store and get attracted to this or that. You can I just did an article about this recently. Online shopping, it's almost an addiction for some people, and as long as your credit card is attached to Amazon, all you have to do is click a button and it's going to be there the next day.
Yeah.
If you disengage there by just taking your credit card away from those areas that are vendors that are difficult for you, if you shop a certain clothing manufacturer and your credit card's already there, unsubscribe to that, and then you at least have to think twice before you buy something.
Yeah, I like that.
There are addictions to shopping. I think I might have been pretty close to because it was soothing my life at that moment, because loneliness or whatever it was, and I would go out and buy. And then, it's not healthy. So you have to kind of rein it back in and say, okay, well, what can I do to do that? So when I wrote my book, Downsize Your Life, Upgrade Your Lifestyle, Secrets to More Time, Money, and Freedom. Thank you. So the money part was a surprise to me, because I didn't have the big house. I didn't have all that expense. I didn't have to hire people to help me do so many of the things. So I realized, oh, I have more money. And it was funny because I was living in a beautiful apartment, which was expensive in Philadelphia, but I still had more money.
Right.
And when you live an intentional life, like a minimalist, you maybe have a list before you go to a store. Or I know a younger person was talking to me the other day. She said that she never goes to a grocery store anymore. She buys everything online. She pays a tiny bit more for it, but she said, I'm not tempted to be buying all that other stuff. And I can totally relate to that, because you're tempted. Oh, I don't really need this, but it would be nice to have. Or
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I like the idea of that. And I think it was in was it in your book? I think it was. The idea of, especially on like an Amazon, to put it in the cart, but then like leave it in there for a week or two, and then go back, or put it on a wish list or something like that. And then if you still really need it
Right.
in whatever time, then go get it. But
That little bit of time lapse, right? So if you think about going into, I don't know, a beautiful clothing store, and you're so tempted by that, but if you simply hold yourself back and say, okay, I'm going to come back tomorrow. And it's not always easy. Of course, it may be gone tomorrow. That's another thing.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you just hold yourself back just a little bit, and it does take some discipline to do.
It does take some discipline. Yeah. I also saw, I don't know if it was a blog or I don't know, some post about a woman who did, I think she did for a year. It was like buying nothing new. So it didn't apply to clothes, or to food, but it applied to like clothes. So then she could only do like a secondhand store, or, nothing new on Amazon or something like that, as a way to, because there's already so much stuff out there. And
Yeah.
like, and she would really need it before she'd go to that different kind of store to like get that thing. So,
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways, and we know this whole thing is, it's not rocket science. We know this. We just have to
yeah,
practice it,
just
right?
have to practice
And
it.
actually,
Yeah.
minimalism is so much about creating good habits, like the atomic habits,
Yeah.
creating good habits and good routines. So
Yeah.
having a morning routine of, well, let's say an evening routine of picking up before you go to bed, to
Right.
cleaning off your kitchen counter, making sure the dishes are done. What does that do to you in the morning? It gives you that peace, right? And
Yeah.
minimalism and a decluttered life is really about having peace of mind. All
Mm.
that anxiety of coming down and seeing the dirty dishes in your sink in the morning, like, who
Yeah.
wants that, right?
Yeah.
Or,
Absolutely.
just maybe decluttering your bathroom,
Right.
with all that makeup that's old and lipstick that's, half worn down and everything else. When you don't have that in your life, it's simpler,
Yeah.
and it just gives you more peace of mind. It
Yeah.
gets you on a good start, you know.
Love it.
So
Love it.
yeah.
We have a couple questions that came through. One is, what about medical equipment like shower chairs or walkers or things like that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, in terms of where to donate. Is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many senior centers around. I think I would look at that as an option. Um, and there are many um, Medicaid areas that they may not have the luxury of the extra walkers or anything like that. I was
Hmm.
dropping off an elderly friend the other night into her building, and it was a subsidized building, and she had to wait for a walker. She had to wait
Oh.
for at least 10 minutes for someone to
Oh.
go get a walker. So it occurs to me that, that would be a perfect, and there's so many laws now. So will they accept that? I don't know. But I think in that particular case, it would have been beneficial to have one right there in the lobby.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's a great idea. Thinking about where could they use it, that they might
Mhm,
just take it.
mhm.
The other question was, did you store anything or just completely get rid of it when you did your
No, that's
big?
that's a great question, and it's a hot topic. All right, so for 2 years, I spent $170 a month on a storage unit. And when I finally got ready to downsize my storage unit, I gave about 95% of that away.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was painful to think about, oh my goodness, I wasted all that money. So um, I call it double downsizing.
Oh,
So when you downsize, make sure that you downsize the right amount. So if you're going from a 5,000 square foot home to a 867 one bedroom apartment, okay,
mm,
well, I knew I would only fit one bed and one sofa, maybe one chair, not even a dining room table as such. It was one that folded.
yeah.
So you have to, and I have something called the ABCs of downsizing, also a free download on my website. It's the designer practice of how you can do this. But so you have to know, I'm going to move from here. I'm going to move to here. I only have so much space. So why do we try to pack in this many clothes into this much of a closet or this much
Right.
stuff into a house like that? So
Yeah.
you kind of have to know, uh, number one, how much do you really need,
Mhm.
and what do you really want? And then you have to make decisions from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you advise not getting the storage unit if you can?
I mean, in retrospect, absolutely. At that
Mhm.
time, going from 5,000 to 867, that was radical.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
could I have done it? The answer is yes. But I couldn't let go of my dining room chairs. I couldn't let go of that gorgeous chandelier. I think what I would say is if you have family that has a big basement and they're willing to take it for, X amount of months, not forever,
Right.
because you don't want to impose on them. Um, I mean, I would never do it again. Um, but at that moment in
At that
time, I
moment. Yeah.
certainly understand people saying, I need a storage unit because I'm not ready yet to let go of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Well, from what I'm hearing is a beautiful expression also of grace for yourself, right? That,
yeah,
it's like it was such a big transition that you were making. And at that moment, I mean, you got rid of a lot of stuff, and at that moment, it was like there was a limit. And so it's like, okay, instead of making it even more painful or more difficult, let me just give myself this little bit of grace. And what I'm also hearing is, if someone were in that situation, perhaps they put a parameter on it, right? Like, I will do this only for 12 months, or like you said, with a friend, or a family member for it's 6 months, it will stay there, and then we'll do something with it. But
yeah. And
yeah,
there's another way to look at this too. So I have a friend who's newly divorced, and she's needing things right now, but ultimately she'll have some of her own stuff. So if you have family or friends that are maybe going through a difficult time, it's almost like lending them your things for a little while. And
hmm
I was with her recently, and so she will be taking a little bit of my stuff that I still want to get rid of. And I said, you can keep it as long as you want. I don't need it. And she may keep it forever. But on the other
yeah,
hand, so there are always outlets in
mm,
our lives. So I mean, for sure, buying and getting a storage unit is definitely a possibility. Um, I don't know. I think of ways that you can let other people borrow it for a little while.
I like it. I love that idea. I love that
But the
idea.
funny thing is, this brings up another subject, and that's when our kids, I've got two sons, they're now adults and have their own homes, but when they were young adults, all of their stuff was in my basement from 3 different apartments. And so I had a big basement. But there comes a time where, okay, guys, this is
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
And I didn't say that to them, at any point until I was downsizing. And then they had no choice. And they
right.
came. But so many baby boomers and people, they allow their kids to impose their stuff on so their bedrooms, for years their bedrooms remain with all of their trophies and
Right.
everything else. So I think we have to put boundaries around what we will allow.
Yeah.
Our homes should not become a repository for
Yeah. Yes. I
all the
love
kids
it.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
We have a great question in here from Jillian, who is, any suggestions for overcoming the internal resistance to letting go of things from the past and the sentimental attachment?
Yeah, I would go to my website and get that download. It's five it's a 5-step guide to declutter your stuff, or to let go of your clutter, but not your emotions, or something
Oh,
like that.
oh, like
But it's
that.
a
Yeah.
5-step guide.
Yeah.
It Everyone loves that because it
Mm,
it breaks through. Number one, it asks, what kind of clutter do you have? And why is that? So do you have attachment clutter? Attachment to what? The sentimental things. Do you have inherited clutter? That's another kind of clutter. So, our parents are passed away, families passed away, you end up with all this clutter. We talked about aspirational clutter, there's bargain clutter, and then there's abundance clutter. But if
mm,
we're talking about things like attachment clutter or inherited clutter, there's oftentimes guilt about
mm,
letting go of that stuff, because if I let go of, in my case, my mother's teacups that we used to have
mm.
tea all the time, then I would be letting go of all those wonderful memories. That's not the case, because it's just stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you realize the memories are right here, and so my solution was to keep 4 of them, not
Mm.
12 of them. And I couldn't fit 12 anyway, but 4, I could still have tea with my
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
my family. And so you are letting go of the things, but the memories will always be with you.
Yeah.
Another little piece of of advice there would be for the attachment clutter. So for me, it was my dad's alarm clock. Why was that so meaningful to me? Because I could hear him winding it to get up to provide for our family. I mean, it was just $1.99 alarm clock, but I cried my eyes out when I thought of giving that away. But my sister said, Rita, what do you want this for? So what I took a picture of it. I wrote a story about it, and I put it into a Shutterfly book. And your guest before, she would be a perfect one to talk to about that, because that's what she does, Dorothy. But I think that it's so important to document it. So why did that alarm clock mean so much to me? And so I have a picture of it with me crying, and then I have the story about it, so that my boys and my grandchildren will say, oh, that's why mom cried about that alarm clock. So it could be the teacups, it could be the alarm clock, it could be that piece of clothing, whatever it is. Because we all have memories attached to things. The wedding dress that, maybe you've been married twice now, and you still have the first wedding dress. Like, what's that all about, right?
Right.
But you have to let go of that, that memory, some, the bad part of it, the good part of it. Okay, well, it's a wedding dress, but do I really need it? And those are the questions you have to keep asking yourself.
I love it. I love that. And I love the idea of, as a nod to what Andy talked about in the last section, but, memorializing it in a different way. So then, taking a picture and writing the story with it and putting that in a book somehow, or, finding a different way to interact with it so that you don't have to have the thing with you all the time. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. We got a couple more minutes if anyone has questions. I did realize that I forgot to ask you my opening question, which I ask everyone, which is what's something you're incredibly proud of, but rarely get a chance to brag about?
A chance to brag about? Well, perhaps creating a business I never thought I would create.
Yeah.
Downsizing designer business, because that's really more legacy. The interior design business, I love it. And of course, beautiful spaces exist because of what we've done. But what matters most to me is that I can change lives through design. So as an interior designer, we do this, but as a lifestyle designer and downsizing designer, we do something far deeper, far more lasting. And so if I could say one thing is, I've been able to change lives through design all of my life, whether it's interior design, downsizing, or lifestyle.
Love it. I love it. Beautiful. We had another question come through from Hope, and Hope, you're asking for places on the North Shore to sell antiques, but Rita doesn't live in Chicago, so she doesn't know unless you randomly know North Shore, Chicago. I would probably hit Google up for that, or maybe check. Hope, I know you're in a good neighborhood group. You could maybe post that in there to see if they have some suggestions. Rita, where are you at these days, Rita?
I'm in Wilmington, Delaware. I'm about 30 minutes south of Philadelphia. And because my granddaughter lives 5 minutes away.
I love it. I love it. And talk with us about, we've got just a couple more minutes. Because we have talked a lot about the things and all that, but what is this design, the aspirational side of the design? How can we connect to what it is we want to create?
Okay, so that's essentially lifestyle design. So interior design, we change physical spaces. In lifestyle design, we change the way one lives one's life. And so in my book, is actually my gift. There's on chapter 3, which is the giveaway. It's about lifestyle design. What is it? And so what I did is I took the same 10 things I do with a brand new client, and how do we get to what they want and what ultimately occurs? We ask 1,000 questions. And so when it comes to lifestyle design, I put those side by side, and I said, oh my God, they're exactly the same. So if you are wanting to design your kitchen, I would ask you, what do you want, what do you want, not want, what works, what doesn't work, all of that kind of stuff. And in lifestyle design, you basically ask the same questions. What do you really want? What do you want? Not what does someone else want? And
Right.
then what do you need? What do you not need? What can you let go of? And then also, what's your vision for the life that would give you fulfillment? So
Yeah.
anyway, lifestyle design is really the way forward.
Yeah.
And in this book, I have 31 steps to begin living the life that you love. So
Love it.
it's about live the life you love by design. So
Yes.
one is like try something new every day. So
Mm.
that gets kind of exciting, doesn't it? When you've never been on a surfboard or a skateboard or something like that. Whatever it is that you want to do, it makes life fun when you do that. Other
Love it.
things are live life on the skinny branches. So
Mm.
take risks. My boys used to tease me because I did say I've owned a business for 40 years. So I would always say, take risks, jump off the bridge. Well, I didn't realize they were literally taking my advice and jumping off the quarry. And after I said, oh, well, anyway, what I meant was take risks, live life on the skinny branches and have fun with that and not be afraid. And, when you think about fear stops so much of what we do. But if you just push through that fear and think of more of the advantages of, what it would be like, or in the case of a trip that I took to the south of France for 30 days with a ticket to and a ticket from with nothing in between. It was I booked the ticket in November and I was going to try a new lifestyle called Work 3 and Play 4. And my whole team was on board about this. But at least 10 times between November and July when I actually got on the plane, I said, oh, I can't do this. They can't live without me. I need to be here. Well, the final question that I asked myself is, what if I don't do it? Which plays right into what you're talking about, every single day. We could be afraid or we could not be afraid. But if we don't do it, we're going to live a life of regret.
Yeah.
And that to me was the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Oh, preach it, Rita. Preach
yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. That's so true. So true.
It's what you're doing and it's what you're bringing to all
Yeah,
of us,
that's what I'm
just as a
bringing. Yeah.
big reminder of,
Yeah.
we've only got so many years left, right? And
Yeah.
what do we do with it? And how can we make that difference that we really want to make? And it
Yeah.
has so much to do with us designing that life that we really want. Because
Yeah.
all these years we might have been doing things that we had to do because we had to, do
Yep.
this or we should do this. Not anymore. What do we
Yeah.
really want to do?
Love it.
Mm.
I love it. I love it. That is the perfect, perfect end note. I know Dorothy you've given us so many resources. I know there's been a number of things in the chat. And Dorothy, I know, put your link to your free gift, which is the chapter 3 of your book. And that is lifestyle design. So it's moving forward based on that. I'm going to try in the recap email, y'all. I will try to grab the other links of things that we put in. But I think if we just go to Rita's website, there's a lot of resources on there. I know that personally, yes, from doing that. So thank you. Thank you, Rita. This has been absolutely amazing. And boy, the chat has been on fire for you. So
And you make it fun. So I'm so
oh,
glad that I'm here.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. This was so helpful. And it's funny because I've had this inkling and I'm going to do it. And I'm even more committed to it now. I'm going to do a staycation for that last bit of December. And I had this inkling the other day. Before I even read your book, I was like, what if I did what if I focused on a room each day and like cleared some stuff out? I'm feeling this desire to really unclutter some things. So
Only
now
4
I'm
hours,
even
remember, no more than
4
4.
hours. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm not caught up, but yes, but now I like the framework and then I'll have something fun planned afterwards. So, and I'm going to,
There's something else that you might want to look at. It was one of the blogs that was about having a vacation mindset every day, regardless of where you are. Because when you go on vacation, you're a different person, right? You're open, you're, curious, and it's just fun. And then you come home and then you go, oh, so there is something to be said about keeping that vacation mindset every single day. You can go in your backyard and play with leaves with your grandchild, or do whatever you want to do. But I think in addition to being fearless, we should also have fun.
Yes. Oh, I'm all about that.
There you are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rita. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Happy holidays, everyone. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Yay. Oh my gosh.